If you take the statistics, despite the challenges we face, we are making monumental progress. But we can only anchor that progress if we have reliable supply of power to spur industrial growth. And so we must work together. And there's a clear example. Not only are we exporting power, we have gas coming from Nigeria, more than 100 mm². And so we take the gas from Nigeria, we generate the power, and we export to some of our neighboring countries. And that is how we build bridges. And that is how we move from borders to building bridges. And I think that we should encourage that. Through the West African Power Pool, we export power amongst ourselves. We should extend it beyond West Africa to Africa so that we can be self-sufficient when it comes to energy demand and energy consumption. We want renewable to be part of our energy mix. Currently, we have an installed capacity of 280. We intend to roll it to 600. And we are doing that through competitive process. Last week, as minister, I got approval from cabinet and from the chief of staff, and we launched a competitive solar bidding process. In 1 week, we've had more than 50 companies putting in the bid. And I find that very impressive. Ghana's peak demand, as against off-peak, the difference is about 800 megawatts. And so it means that we have a huge challenge. So how do we solve this? Through this competitive process, we want to deploy between 200 to 400 megawatts of battery-backed solar capacity. So daytime, they charge it. In the night, when we have the peak demand, they deploy for us so that we can plateau the peak, reduce cost, and ensure consistent supply of power. And I think that we should share this with all of you. We are also deploying 30,000 solar street lights. We have come to the conclusion that the traditional way of using the grid to power the street lights is no more tenable. Because our street lights alone consume about 300 megawatts of our power. That can be channeled to industries so that we use daytime to charge the street lights and deploy them in the night. But we are also solving another problem, and I'm sure it's not peculiar to only Ghana. Sometimes our cables get lost, not stolen. They get lost. And you know the street lights. From one end to the other, if a cable gets truncated, the whole length or that whole line goes off. But if we have solar street lights, if one goes off, the others will remain, and then we take the lights off the grid and save a lot of energy. I've also gotten approval to do another 60,000 more. So our target is to get to 100,000 solar street lights across the country. And so let me use this opportunity to appeal to our friends in the media, particularly the fourth estate, that will work with you, would explain the issues. And so if you see a bit of a slowdown in the conventional street lights, it's because we are putting solar street lights. And with solar street lights, you need to put concrete, cure it, and erect it. It takes a bit of time. We are diversifying our energy mix. We are working with countries such as the US, Russia, France, China, and other friendly countries to deploy nuclear energy. Because I tell you, no country in this world has industrialized without cheap base load power. And that is a fact. You need a certain cheap base load power in order to industrialize. And so even as we diversify, we believe that nuclear is also an option. And in Ghana, we are moving from liquid fuels to what we call gas to power era. Last year, we procured about 6 parcels of liquid fuel. By dint of hard work, we've almost doubled our domestic gas consumption for power. And this year, we've reduced it from 6 to 1. And from 1, we'll be heading to 0. Because I've just gotten approval from cabinet once again for us to construct a second gas processing plant, depending on domestic gas and domestic resources. So we are making progress, but we still have challenges. And as minister, I must be the first to admit that we still have challenges like any other country. We must strengthen our distribution network and strengthen our transmission network. Because when you generate the power, you must evacuate that power. And we'll work with all our IPPs, all our partners to ensure that we address these challenges and make progress so that the people of Ghana and Africa can benefit from our resources. We must therefore establish a very stable and predictable policy framework. Because without a stable policy framework, investors will not be attracted. And so on our own, we decided that we should improving regulatory certainty, a growing energy market, and strategic access through AFTA to over 1.4 billion people living in Africa. To African leaders gathered here, let us move beyond fragmentation by harmonizing regulations, pooling demand, strengthening regional cooperation, and building continental and industrial champions. And to the youth of Africa, continue to challenge us and hold us to the highest level of accountability, because this century belongs to you. Distinguished guests, history rarely announces the moments that defines generations. Yet I believe this is one of them. Africa can either remain a producer of raw material and consumer of imported value, or we become builders of industry, exporters of power, innovators of technology, and architects of our own industry. The choice is ours. Let history therefore record that our generation chose cooperation over fragmentation, industrialization over dependency, and bold action over hesitation. Let us turn borders into bridges. Let us turn energy into industry. Let us turn Africa's immense potential into prosperity for our people. I thank you very much for your attention. I'm most grateful.
Powerful insights as to the state of the energy sector in Ghana. The Honorable John Abdullahi Jinapor, Minister of Energy and Green Transition. Ghana is diversifying its energy mix to power national development. Another round of applause for our Minister. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to what I'll call the central thesis of our gathering here. It is the main keynote address that we've been waiting for. Our next speaker comes to the podium not only with the authority of the presidency of Ghana
and legal tests to real prosperity for our people. Our continent possesses vast and diverse energy resources: hydropower, solar, wind, gas, uranium deposit, and rare ore, critical for a sustainable green energy transition. Turning the abundant energy resources potential to action